What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Monsters on the Loose, the podcast all about monsters from 1933's King Kong to Godzilla vs. Kong. We've all got a smorgasbord of films to talk about. I'm joined in this journey with my co-host, John Perry. John, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fine, Jason. Thanks very much for inviting me into this sort of monster realm. I think that we've got a lot of things to talk about in the forthcoming episodes, and I'm really excited to see where this journey takes us, because we've talked about this for quite a while, and I'm so pleased to finally get this underway.
Yeah, it's really cool that we've finally found time to do this as well, man.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking of this idea for a long time, since maybe when I really got into my channel properly. I was like, I need to do something which focuses my love of monsters, and this was going to be like a bi-weekly thing, just me doing reviews. But I thought I think it'll work better as a podcast, so I've kind of invited you along to on this journey. But yeah, I think being it monsters, I think it opens the doors for so much to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've just been talking about before what we press record button about how much we can actually incorporate in these videos, and we've got like any amount of things to draw upon, and it's going to be a fascinating trip, and we're probably going to revisit a lot of things that we'd previously forgotten about, and we can incorporate a wide variety of, well, monsters in every shape and form.
Yeah. A lot of shapes, a lot of forms, and a lot of sizes.
Exactly.
Just to throw out the definition out there, because we're absolute nerds. According to the Oxford Dictionary, a monster is a large, ugly, and frightening imaginary creature or a thing of extraordinary or daunting size. Sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
So basically, just to explain to people watching or listening, or however you're consuming this podcast right now, the way this the format is for this podcast is that every couple of weeks we're going to pick a film to view, and then we're going to come on the podcast and talk about that one film, basically specifically for that episode. But for this first episode, we're just going to go down memory lane and talk about how we got into monsters, what attracts us to monster movies, and really why we're doing this, why we always want to see monster movies, and why we want to see that genre continue. Because I do. Don't know about you, John, but I really want to see it continue.
Massively. I remember getting into monsters way back when, and I'm quite excited to think that monsters, sometimes you will get into something that would just die a death after maybe 10, 15 years. It would never get resurrected. But I'm so glad to think that monster movies in general are still here, and they're becoming, like Godzilla versus Kong is like a huge movie now. Whereas, when way back in the day, would you have ever thought that it would have traveled all the way across to this length? So I'm so glad that monster movies are still a big draw, and I think they'll be a big draw forever, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think it's a case of it's all fantasy, isn't it? And I think the idea of fantasy and these giant monsters, tiny little monsters, the idea of unfamiliar beings, the whole idea of aliens are out there has filled the imaginations of millions of people, millions of authors, millions of movie makers over the last 100 years or so, however long Hollywood's been going, however long movies have been made or whatever. So I feel like the unfamiliar and the fantasy element of monsters, I just think just attracts a lot of people, and that's what it definitely attracts me. As soon as I know that a film's coming out and it's just about a monster, I was like, need to see that. Like Life came out a few years ago. I'm like, gonna have to go and see that. Yeah, it's got a monster in it. Got to go and see it.
No, I agree. I think that monsters is a great escapism. It's not real, but you always say, I imagine if that was real, trying to put yourself in the places of people who are like coming face to face with these gigantic beasts. And I think it's quite a thing that a lot of people can relate to, the fact that everybody would put themselves in this position. When you go back to the days of when you'd see things like The Land of Time Forgot with cavemen fighting monsters, which obviously could never happen because on Earth at the same time. But it's all about escapism. It's all about, like I say, fantasy. And I think that the way that they're pushing the monster verse at the moment, they're making this sort of even more of a sort of fantasy genre that can sort of breach a lot of things and just make people want to invest into these franchises, which are what they're becoming now, which is absolutely brilliant at this time.
I do want to bring up a fascinating little point. I don't know, like whether it was the same for you growing up, but definitely for me, I think the fascination for like monster movies and monster fiction in general, I think for me it was kind of an extension from dinosaurs, and there is no child. Well, I'm going to say there's no little boy that I know that doesn't like dinosaurs. You know, like I think dinosaurs was that like kind of little, not little, like that. I think dinosaurs was that first kind of introduction to something like these gigantic living things that look awesome, because dinosaurs look awesome, man. I think like a lot of people started off with dinosaurs being those kind of first monsters. I suppose you can say monsters, even though dinosaurs are not imaginary, they actually were things that lived. But because they're extinct, we've never seen them. Maybe we make up our own imaginations what these dinosaurs were like. You know, films like Jurassic Park, Carnosaurus, all these movies that are about dinosaurs. I do think little kids grab onto dinosaurs and maybe move up and get into other films with monsters in them. And I think that might be, for me, I definitely know for me, that's where my fascination with like larger than life kind of unfamiliar creatures came from.
Well, I'll echo that point exactly. That's exactly how I started. I would say that I had everything from books with me, because don't forget, I'm visiting this at this time in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite books of all time was about dinosaurs at that point. And I used to read it incessantly, and I used to find out all about it. And obviously, I would imagine every young boy, their go-to dinosaur was Tyrannosaurus Rex, because he was the baddest dinosaur that's ever lived. I know he's not probably the biggest one or the most ferocious one when you come to know about them now, but you know, T-Rex has got to be right up there with the coolest of dinosaurs, and it's the one that I navigated to immediately. And I used to get little figures to do with dinosaurs, and I used to kind of know everything about dinosaurs, you know, because when you're little, you sponge it, soak everything in. So it was an obvious thing to say when you saw your first thing on the TV, it would have been for me, of a monster movie, you would just be aghast, because you would think, right, that this is it. This is me actually going from a book to the moving picture version of these animals, these ferocious beasts, which there was a lot of dinosaur stop motion in the movies in the 70s. And I think they sort of used that a lot, and obviously threw other bigger monsters in there. But it was, I think you're quite right in saying that I think this is the starting point for a lot of people who are lifelong fans of monsters.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think dinosaurs is a big kind of. Well, I know I'm only speaking from my experience, but like I said, I don't think I've ever met, you know, I said little boy, but girls can like dinosaurs too. You know, like I've not met a child that doesn't like dinosaurs. Like I've got a little 2-year-old nephew, and he has loads of dinosaurs, and he can say dinosaur as well. He goes dinosaur. You know what I mean? Like so. Yeah. And it's really crazy, like being, because I was like I think my mum was saying to me, like, you was obsessed with dinosaurs. Like I have loads of books about dinosaurs. I could look at them and name them. You know, I could I have all these different examples of just media that I would consume with dinosaurs in. Like I could talk about like even stuff that's animated, like The Land Before Time, probably one of the big movies for me, and my obsession for dinosaurs as a kid. Like I love that movie. So I've not seen any of its 14 sequels, but
there's a large amount of sequels to that one, which is quite strange, but it's
crazy, very crazy. But like by the time like Jurassic Park came out, my mind was literally blown and melted out my ears. Because I think if you think about it, with dinosaurs being the starting point, Jurassic Park literally changed the game.
It did
for everything going forward.
massively.
Just not for monsters, just dinosaurs at this point.
Yeah.
But obviously a lot of those techniques went on to give us, the monster movies that we know. But if we're gonna move away from dinosaurs for a second and actually go into proper, monsters, like really, like the definition says, ugly, frightening creatures. I think my first exposure to a proper monster was probably Gremlins. And I think I was 6 years old, and it scared the absolute jeebus out of me. And I wouldn't watch it if it was on, because it's not necessarily for adults, but it isn't really for kids either. It's kind of like in that middle ground.
It's quite frightening for kids, I've got to admit. It's not your average sort of fluffy little, because it does start off like that, but it takes a dark turn, especially if you see it at like a young age. I think you're quite freaked out by that kind of the way that it kind of changes tack in the middle and becomes really like a monster movie, and you don't expect it to. But yeah, I agree.
And the little gremlins, they're pretty frightening, I would say so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's something that's quite. I think if you see it a little bit older, you like it for that reason, because you want that little bit of. If you're a younger kid, you probably like that sort of cute little mogwai, and then you're not expecting the other side of it. But I think when you're older and the other side happens, you quite enjoy that fact of seeing that little bit of extra sort of bit of violence and adultness about it, which it's got both of it, which is quite a unique film, because mainly most monster films will either start off in a one level and stay there. This is kind of a game of two halves for me.
Got a little fun fact about Gremlins before we move on to something else. Did you know, in America in particular, Gremlins was one of the big reasons they created the PG-13 rating?
No, I didn't know that.
Because they had a lot of parents complaining that Gremlins was too dark for their children.
I could agree with that. If you took your kid at too young age thinking you were going to get one movie, and it changed into that second type of movie at the end of it, with the granny flying across out of the window on the you didn't expect them type of things in this movie, from what you got, in the flavor of it before it went into it. But I just think that's why it's such a good film, because you've got like something that appeals to a large amount of, you can get a lot of an audience in that movie. It's not purely for kids, not purely for adults, as you say. It's got a really good middle ground, one that you don't see in very many monster films.
Yeah, I find that, I find with monster films, usually they tend to be either catered for everyone, or they're catered for strictly like adult audiences. When you go more down the horror route, and they're more kind of gory and they're more kind of violent.
Yeah,
I love that shit though, so it's all good. But yeah, I don't know, like it's just I think, but I like you said, you don't get those middle ground movies anymore, like Gremlins. But perhaps Gremlins kind of scared people away because it got a lot of complaints about it being not as suitable. Because I think in America it came out as a parental guidance, as a PG. But because it had that dark turning halfway through and became sort of like a monster horror film, and they had so many complaints, they added that PG-13 rating where no, I think it's like, if you're younger than 13, you can go, but you have to be accompanied by an adult or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I didn't know that fact, but I can imagine that being, well, obviously it's true, but I can imagine that happening because, I think it did throw a lot of people to be what it was, the full content of the film. Yeah.
So Gremlins was the big kind of like first sort of like monstery movie. If you don't count Dinosaurs, that is probably the first film with some kind of monster in it. How about you? What do you remember in terms of your earliest memories for monster films?
Well, I can remember, I know exactly what my first monster film was, and you might be surprised about this, and I don't think you've seen this yet, and you do have to see it. I'll talk about that in 2 seconds. But I do know that with being a dinosaur freak back in the day, I just loved everything about them. That when these films started to come on the TV, because obviously there was a load of films on TV. You don't really see them on TV anymore. You've got to go and buy them on Blu-ray or 4K to see a lot of films. I know you've got your Sky Movies and whatnot, and Netflix, but these were just on terrestrial TV, and they were on all the time, especially in a Sunday morning slot. Well, obviously, you're a kid, you're going to watch the Sunday TV, I think on BBC Two, and they would put all these films on. And the one that was my first ever introduction into this film is like, wow, is this actually, can you see these things on the film? And it looked 100% real, was Valley of Gwangi. The stop motion on there by Ray Harryhausen was like, for me, at a young age, was just so mind-blowing. It's a bit like a Jurassic Park moment, but a lot earlier on than that. And when I saw that, I thought, right, I didn't think I'm going to. Every time there's something like that on the TV, I would always watch it because it was literally dinosaurs alive on the screen. And it's just such a great film as well. Interestingly enough, I don't own it, but I do need to get it. But I thoroughly recommend it. It's a brilliant film.
Cool. Yeah, I don't think I've seen it, you know.
Yeah. No, you'd love it. You would really love this film. It's one of the best Ray Harryhausen films for me.
Ray Harryhausen. I think I own it, you know. I think I own it.
It's on the HMV Premium Edition.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to think then because I'm like, do I have it? I'm sure I have it. I do have it. Yeah, I do have it. But I've not seen it yet.
The premise is to go to this valley, which I don't know if they're exploring or anything. I think it's kind of like a traveling sort of circus troupe, I think. And I think they're just going through this valley to go somewhere. But this valley is like the land that time forgot, which is like a bit that the dinosaurs have lived in all the way, and nobody knew they were there, and they've kind of been stuck in time, and they've just lived out their lives. And they go into this valley and then be confronted by T-Rexes and all that type of thing. It's really good. It's like I say, it's the first one I ever saw, but for me, it's one of the best ones ever, and it's very watchable. And it's just the thing when you saw it, you thought, and not that I knew anything about him at that time, I thought I have got to see more stuff by this or in this genre or this type. There was no way I was going to let that go as a one-off to say that was all right, and then I was like addicted to it. And usually they were throwing them on left, right, and center on the TV, especially on a Sunday. You would always get some kind of monster movie in the shape of like that type of movie. So you had a lot of stuff to choose from. So it wasn't as if I just saw these things and that was it, and I never saw them again for years. They were literally on every week, so you would be getting quite a good knowledge of these movies. That interestingly enough, the movie that I never ever saw or never remember seeing on TV was Godzilla. Madly enough.
Yeah, obviously, you know my we're gonna get to Godzilla down the line properly with a proper episode, but obviously, you know my opinion on the original, Gojira.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's probably people are probably being sick with the notion of me talking about it again because I've spoken about it for so long. But yeah, that for me, that I bear in mind I've only really been into Godzilla for a few years, so but it baffles me to think that it took me that long to really kind of go deep into the Godzilla franchise. But that film for me, it's just the fact that I love it so much now in 2021, I can't the idea of trying to comprehend the impact that it made when it came out must have been human. It must have been huge,
But funny enough, weirdly enough, I can't remember. I can remember seeing a lot of the Ray Harryhausen films on at the cinema. They were always on at the cinema, when they had the big premieres in the 70s, like Sinbad and all that type of thing. Jason the Argonauts, which was absolutely stunning at the time. Even though I didn't see that on release, I would have saw it as like used to throw these out on a Saturday morning. Used to have a double bill at the cinema with these type of things all the time. And that was my sort of introduction by especially the special effects to me just looked real at that point in my life. But I just was so amazed at this genre that I'd fell into, not really knowing that I was in a genre. And I just was hungry to see more and more of these films, and gladly they were on the TV a lot. It's a shame. It's a shame, really, that they don't get shown that much, because obviously you would show these to your maybe a nephew in a couple of years' time. You'd start to show him the Godzilla stuff, and that's how I showed my son the Godzilla stuff on sort of like physical media, because you couldn't really see them on the TV, unfortunately. But I like the thought of in my like growing up, I could literally see, well, not anything I wanted, but anything that was on the TV, and there was a lot of stuff on the TV, probably stuff that you can't see anymore, which is brilliant to think.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny you bring up stuff like Jason and the Argonauts, because like it's funny you brought up the whole Sunday, because on like the weekend when I was growing up, the Sunday, my dad always had like an older movie on, be it black and white, be it like more of a color film, but you could tell it was like, you know, an older film, maybe from the late 50s or, you know, 60s or something. And that's how I discovered like stuff like Jason and the Argonauts, you know, and Clash of the Titans. And I still deem them to be somewhat monster films in their own right, because they've got all kinds of ghoulish, you know, monsters in them.
Yeah.
You know, like you know, if you think about it, Jason and the Argonauts, excuse me. If you think about it, Jason and the Argonauts is somewhat a it's almost like a video game, like it's like a monster boss rush, where you know you get Jason and these Argonauts, they get somewhere, they have this giant monster to defeat, they move on, they've got another monster to defeat, they move on, then you've got the Hydra fight where you fight the Hydras, then you at the end you've got the skeleton fight, which is like my favorite part of the film. Like the stop motion is unreal. So it's almost that film is almost like, how many monsters can we throw in? How many monster boss fights can we have in this movie? And
I agree. You never knew what was coming in that movie, what was next. And you knew, and especially, you're right, you know, when you go and watch these films, you would always want you always expect some massive new type of monster, Medusa, all these type of things. You knew there was something coming, but sometimes you're really, and you had is it Jason Argonauts where you have the big monster with the sort of Cyclops? Is that in that movie? And he's got the horn on his head. Or maybe a different one, but that's a brilliant monster, that one. I'm going to say it's called the Cyclops, although I don't know that. And I just remember that one being one of my favorite monsters. Like I say, these monsters movies were always chock full of these monsters that were just mind blowing.
It's like with so for example, like you can talk about Clash of the Titans, Medusa. Like I know, like she's based off of the Gorgon, the Greek mythology. But even like we could do a whole episode on Greek mythology and how awesome their monster designs are. Like as a monster, Medusa is fucking terrifying.
Oh yeah,
you know,
snakes
for hair. She's literally like slithers around like a snake, but if she looks at you, you turn to stone.
I think actually, do you think that Medusa in general is a very underused monster? Because I can remember in the Gorgon and in the monster movie, the Ray Harryhausen film, Clash of the Titans, I can only remember them two films. I can't remember being used in anything else. Maybe she is, but that character could make a great film.
Yeah, I've not seen the Gorgon, but I really want to see that film. It looks like a good time. But yeah, I can't think. I think the Gorgons have been used elsewhere, but the titular Medusa hasn't. I don't think.
Yeah, a good character that should be. It should have a lot more of a, not like a franchise, of course, but a lot more exposure, I find.
Yeah. Going back to Clash of the Titans, though, we're talking about obviously monsters. I always would bring up some, like, what I love about that film as well is they talk about the Kraken for the whole film, like, oh, you got to do this, or the Kraken. So in the back of you, especially as a kid, like back of me was like, what the fuck, what's this Kraken? What is a Kraken gonna look like? Oh mate, if they don't show us the Kraken, I'm gonna be well annoyed. And when the Kraken comes out of the sea at the end, he's just like this massive hulking monster. It's so cool.
No, it's a great monster. That great end sort of boss. Yeah, in that film, yeah, definitely.
But I like it where they keep mentioning the Kraken throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
So you're waiting the whole film to see it. You know,
Like
I
they're
like
like
that. It's
teasing
really
it
good.
through the whole film. You're right.
Yeah,
You know, the Kraken's coming, and you just think, wow. Like I say, you're just waiting. You know it's there, or it's going to be shown, but
yeah.
your anticipation is just mounting through the whole movie. I saw that film at cinema, and it was a really good watch. Actually, really rated it very highly.
Yeah, I always see Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans as kind of a duo
Yeah.
because they're both Ray Harryhausen and they're both kind of obviously one was made in the 60s, one was made in the 80s, but they feel tonally similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it helps that they're both Greek mythology as well. But
Yeah.
they both feel like, you know, if I had the time, I would watch them back to back, you know, because I feel
Yeah.
like it would work. But yeah, I love both of those films. I've got the premium collection versions, which I think are probably the best versions for those films you can get.
I think you're right. They were ones that didn't seem to be out. They seem to be quite hard to get, and I'm liking the fact that these days more and more monster films from like old classic monster films, that seem to be like the norm now, as opposed to a while ago. It seemed to be that these ones, everyone used to talk about these movies, Jason the Argonauts, Valley of Gwangi, and you thought, oh, I'd love to see that again, but it was just nowhere to be found because maybe people weren't that interested in resurrecting them. But these days, I think there's more people looking into them. What can we look at that was released years ago that would might be due a sort of a new special edition in that? And I think I'm seeing more of them coming out, which is brilliant, actually.
There's a film that I really want to own. There's actually is the original. I think the original is easier to get, but the remake is quite hard to get, which is the Attack of the 50-Foot Woman.
Yeah,
I want to get both of those, but I know the remake is a lot harder to get hold of physically than the original. I'm not sure if the original's even got a UK release or not. I'm not too sure.
I don't think it has. I've saw another one I used to see on the TV all the time. These to be, I would love them to have a dedicated like movie channel to show movies like this. It seems like they've just been eradicated from easy access, which is a shame because some of them are just so much fun.
Yeah. What was I going to say? But if so I've moved on to Attack on 50-Foot Woman. So I was going to say the reason why I brought that up was I just want to bring it to the audience and to you, John. Do you consider that movie a monster movie because it's just a woman that's really big?
Well, it's funny you should say that. Maybe I didn't think so at the start of this, but because when you've put that from the Oxford Dictionary, with this of a gargantuan size, a big, huge fantasy monster, I think I would now because of the fact of the size and the spectacle. I know it's a human being in the form, and it's something you know what it is because we were talking before about something that's like you couldn't even imagine, like Godzilla is not in your memory because you don't know what a Godzilla is till you see it. And then this Attack of the 50-Foot Woman is obviously just a woman blowing up, but I do think that it's because of the size and the proportions and the aspect of it. I would class it as a sort of monster film.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page. I just wanted to throw that out there because like we were talking before we went live or before we started recording, and I mentioned how like the word monster for me really kind of goes more kind of unfamiliar territory. So the less human they look, the more monster they are, in my opinion. Regardless of what that definition says, like I said, Gremlins is a monster, Critters is a monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon is a monster, the fishmen from humanoids from the deeps, they're monsters. You know what I mean? They're aquatic monsters. As far as away from human form you can get, the more they are to me monsters.
Yeah, I agree.
So we spoke about zombies before we went live. I think zombie is in somewhat of a grey area,
Yeah, I think that you could like kind of imagine a zombie, but like the Kraken. When you were sitting there, somebody said in that film, "Oh, there's a zombie coming at the end of the film." You'd have a good idea what you're in for. But the fact when we're talking about the Kraken all the way through it, you haven't got the
Yeah.
first idea what you're going to get, and the
Yeah.
thing you got was probably better than you could even imagine in your mind.
Yeah.
I think that's means that the zombie genre in general isn't really what we would consider to be something that we'd probably talk about much in these podcasts, because they're not
Yeah.
really fantastical, although they are. They're not real, but
Mhm.
they're not something you couldn't imagine.
Yeah, because I'm of the opinion, like, we've had human beings turn to cannibalism, right? Cannibalism is a real thing that happens.
Yeah.
So that's already been. It's not really an imaginary thing because it happens in life. There's people that have done crimes where they've killed someone and ate their remains, right?
Yeah.
Cannibalism is a real thing. So zombies are just more of a kind of like. It's literally like. Basically, it's all it is just a dead person that eats you.
Mhm.
So I don't know. They are kind of monsters because they are kind of horrific to look at, and they're like decomposing, and they're just. But I think they're too human for me.
Actually, I've got a question for you at this point. Would you consider monster movies to be horror movies? Because a zombie film is usually a horror film, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't. Do you think what do you class a monster movie as? Do you class it as a horror movie?
I think this is the thing, right? So I've had I've had discussions with people where I've asked people, is Godzilla a horror film? Because anyone that's watching this this podcast, if anyone that's seen the original Godzilla film, it's not the nicest film. It's not. I wouldn't say
Yeah.
you're having fun watching Godzilla 1954 because it's almost a very real portrayal of the atomic bomb. Godzilla's that metaphor. That's the whole purpose of Ishiro Honda swapped out the atomic bomb for Godzilla to kind of give you this idea of the terror that nuclear power did to the Japanese people.
Yeah.
So it is very bleak. It's very real. It's very grounded. You get a sense of the terror that the people on the ground went through, kind of thing. So I do sort of consider the first Godzilla film. Again, I say the first Godzilla film. Remember that I'm saying the first one.
Yeah.
To me, that is a science fiction horror movie.
Right. Got it. Yeah, I can see that because it's nothing like the other ones. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I think Godzilla is hands down has done this. I think Godzilla has single-handedly changed how people perceive monster films. Because if you look at like the 60s and the 70s Godzilla stuff, they're more kind of like superhero movies with monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you look
yeah.
at stuff like Godzilla versus Megalon, it's literally like it's almost like a tag team wrestling match.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
It's a fun dumb movie, but it's as far as horror as you're going to get, in my opinion. So
you're right. Yeah, there's no
so
horror elements to it.
So I think Godzilla has changed what people perceive monster movies to be, and I think monster movies have become more kind of pure science fiction fantasy. If you're going to put any kind of label like that on them,
I think they're more science fiction led. I think that they might. I think there's another thing. If you see it too young, like Kong versus Godzilla, would scare you. I'm not saying it wouldn't, but it would never frighten you the same way as the reality of Godzilla 54 would.
Yeah,
it would. If they got it at a young age, if they got the whole thing about it, maybe they didn't even get the fact that this was like based in reality to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a sci-fi. I think when you get a sci-fi horror, apart from Alien, I think they're not like a horror movie. But I think Alien is a horror movie for me.
Oh, Alien is 100%. The first Alien is. I wouldn't say Aliens is. I think that's more of a science fiction action film.
Yeah.
but that debate can go on for generations and generations, right?
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean,
But I think a good bracket for this term, the monster movies, is 90% probably falls into sci-fi action. For me,
yeah, I
yeah.
think I'd agree, but I still will defend the first Godzilla as a science fiction horror film, because I do
Oh
think it
yes,
has so much horror in that. Is so many sequences that have basically etched themselves into my brain that is just horrific in that movie. And
yeah,
that movie's I think what's my DVD of that? I think it's like a print. No, I think it might be a U, the original Godzilla in
yeah.
the UK. I think it might be a U. Or
Mhm.
is it a parental guidance? I can't remember, but it's it's not like it's for adults. It's suitable for like younger audiences, which baffles me because I think it's if you saw that at the wrong age, I think it would mess you up. Like I don't think it would go down too well.
Well, I think if you were young and you saw like Godzilla versus Megalon first, and you thought you were getting
Yeah.
into the same thing when you saw the original Godzilla, I think you've been for quite a shock.
Oh,
You would think, hang on a minute, this is not what I'm here for. This is too realistic. There's no element of like fun in it. It's basically like a sort of like a drama
yeah, it
in
is. Yeah,
tone.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally agree there.
there's no humor in it whatsoever. So yeah,
But I think that's another reason. Like I know we're really on the Godzilla talk right now, but I promise you, it won't all be Godzilla talk in this podcast. I promise you, guys. But the one thing that I love about Godzilla is that it's able to flip the tones like that.
yeah,
That's what makes a franchise so fun and so joyous to me.
yeah,
You want your happy-go-lucky Godzilla movies where he's a superhero. Look at the 60s and 70s stuff. Perfect.
yeah,
If you want like the bleak as all hell, just like the most darkest shit ever, you can look at the original Godzilla. You can look at Shin Godzilla, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, all monsters out attack. Where
yeah.
he's probably at his most evil in that one. He's pretty evil in that. Yeah, I think I've always said this though, right? I'm going to say this and we can move on to something else away from Godzilla. But yeah, I'd say what I think the Godzilla franchise, all 35 films, I think there's something for everyone
Oh, definitely.
and there's
Yeah,
something for all age groups in the franchise.
yeah,
And I think Godzilla had to do that to stay relevant for 65 years.
yeah.
You know,
Exactly. I was thinking actually before you even said that, I was thinking that Godzilla has sort of went not with the fashions, but he's went with the tones. The Godzilla 70s movies feels very 70s, but some movies that were made in the 70s, they never made it past the 70s. They stopped in the 70s because they couldn't make it in the 80s. But in the 80s, he came back with a slightly different tone, same as 90s, same as he is today, same as he was when he started. I think he's the most sort of flexible character.
yeah,
And like you say, he had to be. If you make films for that length of time with one character, I don't think they could have done it with King Kong at all. If they'd made 35 King Kongs, it just wouldn't have worked at all. It just,
yeah.
he hasn't got the range. I think Godzilla's got so much range. You might think it's just a giant lizard that just shouts, but it's far from that. And I like the fact that he's got so many facets to his movies.
Yeah, he's so diverse to the point where people think he's he's humanity's defenders. He's not. Godzilla will do what he has to do to protect Earth.
Yeah.
If that means wiping us out, he'll do that
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah. I know what you're
he's
saying.
he's on that cusp of like you know that's why I think I love the versus movies as well, is because the versus movies, the reason why you think he's a hero in those versus movies is because those other monsters, say like, Megalon, um, Hedera, etc., etc. You get my
Yeah.
point, right? Though those other monsters, he's seen them as a threat to Earth, so he's got to wipe them out. So he's protecting Earth because he's meant to be the balance. He deals with
Yeah.
the balance. So people forget that as soon as humanity starts pushing the balance the wrong way, Godzilla's going to do something to us to fuck us up because we're ruining the balance. You
Oh
know?
yes, we've got to be on his team. Basically, he'll protect us. Well, he protect the planet first. We come second.
Yeah.
And we're just a sort of byproduct of him stopping people coming, like these monsters coming to smash our place to bits, because he just wants rid of them. And it's good that he's on our side, but we've got to be on his side as well, or he doesn't like that at all. So I mean, you can talk a lot about the whole. There's a lot to Godzilla that people probably at face value don't get, and that's why he's so interesting as a character. Probably, I think I did prefer way back when King Kong, because I didn't really see Godzilla for a long time. When I started off my journey into watching monsters, it started with King Kong. And probably I went from King Kong 33 to King Kong 76. I saw at the cinema, which I thought was brilliant. It was just such a gigantic thing to have, like a spectacle to see, because it made it, for my eyes, like the real King Kong, even though he's not the real King Kong. When you look at it now, it's not that good. But it was amazing. But then looking back on it, it doesn't hold a candle to Godzilla. Looking back on it, like when I know now, and after watching all the films, now I know exactly how good Godzilla was, and King Kong is pale in comparison, even though he's a good character.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know about this. Speaking of King Kong, there was a direct sequel that was pushed out really quickly after King Kong 33.
Yeah.
Which is Son of Kong.
Son of Kong, yes.
Yeah. It gets a lot of hate, but I don't think it's that bad. I think it's all right.
It's a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, it was all right. I remember it was another one that used to be on the TV all the time. It probably was on with King Kong and Son of Kong on the same bill on a Sunday morning on BBC Two, I would imagine.
And there's rumors that Son of Kong is where they're taking the MonsterVerse next.
I've heard that, yes.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting.
I'm interested to see how the MonsterVerse goes at this moment. I think it's kind of it's ended in an interesting part at the minute, like to say not a full stop, but to say right, I understand where we're on at the moment, but I don't know how it's going to continue. I know it's going to continue, but I'm interested to see how they're going to continue it.
I'm not sure if Toho has extended the license yet or not for Legendary to use the Godzilla and friends.
That's the key question. Every time we talk about Godzilla, we've always got to bring Toho in and their sort of stranglehold to have on Godzilla. Yeah, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, like it's crazy because, like, obviously being me, I know we're still talking about Godzilla. I do apologize, guys, if you're like being sick in the bucket or something. But it's really crazy because like, we've been talking about collecting Godzilla, it's a pain in the ass and all that kind of stuff. But in Japan, they released this like full set of all like 30, I think it's all 30 Japanese Godzilla films. It's a whole set that all the cases are all uniform. So it looks all nice. It comes with a wearable Godzilla mask from 1950, the 54 version.
Wow.
I found one on eBay. It was like 1,500 quid. And I'm like, I know I can't watch them because they're in Japanese and I won't be able to know what's going on. I still can have fun even if they're in Japanese because I have fun with them. Yeah. I was like, but I want it.
They're so collectible.
See, in Japan, they get all these lavish releases of all the Godzilla stuff. Yeah. Whereas in the West, in other areas of the world, we get literally fuck all, basically, which is a shame.
Do you think that they sort of hold on to Godzilla as their sort of thing, which they've created? I mean, yeah, they have. It's their monster. It's like to their country. You would think you said name is a Japanese monster, everyone would go for Godzilla. Of course it would.
Yeah.
But do you think that's got Toho? Are they being a little bit too like they want them and they want to keep them to themselves? And they should share them about a touch more than they are.
This is my opinion. I could be very wrong, but from what I've gathered, this is kind of my opinion on the matter and what I think is going on. So Godzilla is so ingrained in Japanese culture that I've got a feeling that Toho feel like if they license it out to do like the MonsterVerse stuff, which They've come out and said they've really liked, which is good, right?
Yeah.
I think they're terrified of like letting the West, the Western world let loose on Godzilla, because if it's done wrong, maybe Toho feel like, well, Godzilla is so ingrained with Japanese culture, doing it wrong, letting Westerners do it wrong is an insult to our culture, perhaps.
You got a point. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, and that would be pretty. To them, would be a bit unforgivable if they got the worst ever thing with. I mean, some of the Japanese movies can be a little bit borderline wow when you watch them, but at least they had a thread going through. There's some of them that I like better than other ones, but if the Westerners made a really awful one, then yes, it would be a bit of an insult. You're right. So maybe that's why they've got a little bit of a creative stranglehold on them to say they don't want like his sort of his whole thing spoilt by people who don't understand him.
Yeah, to put it in perspective, you go. I've not been to Japan. I really want to go to Japan. They've got a Godzilla hotel that has a giant Godzilla looming over the hotel.
It's amazing.
I need to go there. And they have, of course, they've got a Godzilla museum, which sounds amazing, where they've got some of the original suits on display. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, they've got mega Godzilla's head in there, the original Mecha Godzilla. That would just imagine seeing that in real life. It'd be unreal.
I love Mecha Godzilla. What was I going to say? Little fun fact: I do believe Godzilla is the only non-human character to have a Hollywood star. I could be wrong though. Don't hold that to me. I could be wrong, but he does have his own Hollywood star.
Wow. I wouldn't know any other monster that would have that.
What do they call that? The star? What do they call? Is it just called the Hollywood star?
I think it's a Hollywood star. Yes, that's right.
Is it like a Walk of Fame or something? I forget what it's called.
Yeah, I think the street it's in is called the Walk of Fame. Yeah, it's next to some cinema, isn't it? I remember seeing a cinema and it goes across the whole wall. I haven't been there, but I didn't know he had one. I know there's different. There's a lot of different people, or not objects, but maybe like C-3PO and R2-D2 in there as well. I believe. So you've got like sort of things like that aren't really humans to a certain extent. Yeah. But I'm interested to know that Godzilla's. Well, that just shows you if Godzilla's got one. Well, yeah.
The thing is, though, if Godzilla's got one, King Kong's got to have one as well, right?
You would think, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, like
you would. Be interesting to find out, actually.
I'm gonna have to do some research after this. Yeah. As we're coming up to the end of the show, I just want to end on this with a film that I think needs more love. Right. This has been known to be, like, people call it a British Godzilla ripoff, which is heavily inspired by Godzilla, there's no doubt. But I love this movie. No one really talks about it. It always gets forgotten. In the context of giant monsters in particular, and that is Gorgo. Now, you've not seen Gorgo, have you, John?
I think I haven't seen it because I would have remembered it, and it would have been one of the ones that should have been on TV, but it was one of the ones I always wanted to see but never got around to it. I never saw it.
Well, Gorgo is such a charmingly wonderful film. It doesn't have any of the dark, bleak overtones as the original Godzilla. It's more of a kind of film where you kind of root for the monster, because the basic premise is a bunch of sailors are trying to make a bunch of money. They're trying to find stuff to get money and all this, and they come across this monster in the sea, and the monster comes ashore, and they basically capture it because they think, oh, can you imagine all the money we're going to make if we show this guy off? Find of the century, innit? Yeah, so they name him Gorgo, and they put up an exhibit, and they make loads of money. And then some scientists come back and they go, based on our measurements and our research on the monster, we've determined that this monster is a baby, and now we've got the adult is probably going to come and find it, and the adult's probably about 10 times the size. So it's basically about the mother coming to find her child and basically destroying London in the process. It's so much fun.
Yeah, that sounds really good, actually.
and it is a film where you just want the mother to win. You're like, yeah, fuck them up, do it.
Yeah,
it's really good. I had a blast with this movie, and it is quite readily available on Blu-ray, because as far as I'm aware, it is public domain. So there's a bunch of different versions of the Blu-ray out there on eBay and that.
I think I might investigate that, because I'm a big fan of these movies, and I will probably, anyone that's in this genre, especially with the sort of kaiju ones, I'll go straight for and get. I don't have any reservations to say, well, I'm not too sure about this, not too sure about that. I'll go head first into these ones, because I know what I'm getting into, and I do like that whole blanket of those movies. That you want that type of movie, don't you? You're not expecting any sort of, like, you don't really care about the acting to a certain extent. You just want something that delivers some great monsters fighting and destroying stuff.
Yeah, and but it's got that heart to it as well, right?
Yeah,
It's got
that's a good story, man. It's got a little twist on it.
It's got a lot of heart to it. I really enjoy it, and I think the transfer on this Blu-ray is actually pretty good as well. So
yeah,
I really recommend it if you're looking for a Godzilla alternative, guys. A British Godzilla alternative. Gorgo is the film for you. And I've been secretly messaging Legendary to see if they can get it, bring Gorgo into the Monsterverse. Please, Legendary, do it for me. No one else, just me. Like, oh, that Jason wants fucking Gorgo in the goddamn Monsterverse. We better do it. He's got 358 subscribers. You better do it. Anyway, I think it's a good time to wrap up, my friend.
Okay.
Episode 1 is a wrap. Everybody who's watching, thank you so much for checking out the podcast. Episode 1 is in the bag. Let us know in the comments down below what monster films you would like us to talk about in the future. This is looking to be more of a kind of a bi-weekly show, and John is going to be joining me for the foreseeable future, so it's going to be a good old time, John.
Oh, excellent. And it's great to have this sort of first episode in the bag, which is sort of bringing you up to speed and what we're sort of planning to do going forward. And I can see this being quite a great series to be involved with, and I'm really excited to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, just to end it with just to let you know kind of thing with the audience. This first episode was more kind of just like, just more kind of open, just to spieling whatever, with just basically our overview on the monster genre and stuff like that. Yeah. But future episodes will be more kind of focused on one particular movie. So if you've got any recommendations for future episodes, maybe monster films you've not seen, that's always going to be fun. Let us know down below. As always, if you like what you see here, hit subscribe and hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, which is the best way not to have Godzilla come and destroy your town. And also, don't forget to throw a subscribe to my boy, wrong way, my boy John from Mondo Chelloveck Movies. As always, guys, I have been Jason, and I've been joined by John for Monsters on the Loose, the monster show of all monster shows. Remember, don't be a monster, and come back next time. See you later, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
The most important thing, don't ever feed him after midnight.
Yeah.